Even though it feels like years since Trump was first sworn in, we are only approaching the 100th day of his second administration, believe it or not. Now, he has caused so much chaos and destruction that I don't think anything else going forward is going to surprise us. Sure, we'll see new lows, but I think that anyone who's paying attention is expecting the worst at this point. I mean, just last week, his administration arrested a judge, and the day after that, his team started selling Trump 2028 merch. Were you surprised by that? I don't think so. Was I surprised by that? No. Now, the week before that, Trump's counterterror czar floated the idea of charging political opponents with terrorism. Not to mention, the official White House Twitter account tweeted a photo of Trump holding a clearly doctored image of tattoos on Abrigo Garcia's hand to, I guess, prove that he's a member of MS-13. I don't know who this is for, but that's what they tweeted. Not to mention, the day before that, they explicitly tweeted that he's not coming back, even though the Supreme Court said in a 9-0 ruling that they have to facilitate his return. And none of this is surprising. But the question is, what does he have in store for us this week? And will we be surprised by it? I don't think so, but I think most of us are expecting him to reach new lows, and that is indeed the case, not just for the administration, but for his supporters and what they're willing to support as well. And we found out that Trump's DOJ is ordering ICE agents to enter Americans' homes without warrants if they suspect that a so-called alien enemy is being harbored. And on top of that, he signed an illegal executive order instructing federal agencies to not abide by the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, which was passed back in 1974 and amended in 1976 to bar discrimination against women based on marital status. Now, prior to this law's passage, banks could require women to have a male guardian co-sign loans for them. But if federal agencies aren't enforcing the law, then discrimination against women that still very much exists could go unpunished, as lawsuits would just come to a standstill since the federal government is no longer going to defend them since the law isn't being enforced. Oh yeah, and the White House press secretary didn't shut down the possibility of arresting Supreme Court justices when she was asked about it by a reporter, which is totally normal for functioning democracies, folks. Happens all the time. But as bad as all of this is, I don't think anyone is surprised by this since we passed the Rubicon a long time ago. Still, having said that, though, there are things that are so demonic that this administration is doing that you can't not look at it and think, I can't believe it's come to this, even though I expected it to come to this at some point. So I want to focus on one story in particular that really shows that there is no depth to the cruelty of this administration or his supporters. So we've reached the stage where we're now deporting U.S. children without due process. One of them, by the way, has stage 4 cancer and was not given access to their medication when they were deported with their mother. And the Trump administration isn't calling these deportations mistakes or administrative errors. They're just admitting, yeah, they did it, and now they're defending it. They're doubling down. And worse, his supporters aren't just saying they're okay with this, they are cheering it on as things like this happen. But before we get to all of that, I want to give you some basic details about this story because it is as bad as it sounds. The Washington Post reports 3 U.S. children from 2 different families were deported with their mothers by Immigration and Customs Enforcement during the early hours of Friday morning. One of them is a 4-year-old with stage 4 cancer who was deported without medication or the ability to contact their doctors, the family's lawyers said. According to their lawyers, both families were taken into custody while attending routine check-ins this week in New Orleans as part of the Intensive Supervision Appearance Program, which allows individuals to remain in their communities while undergoing immigration proceedings. Lawyers say the families were taken to Alexandria, Louisiana, a 3-hour drive from New Orleans, where they were prevented from communicating with their family members and legal representatives, and then put on a flight to Honduras. Lawyers representing the father of the 2-year-old U.S. citizen who was deported, identified as VML in court documents, filed an emergency petition in the Western District of Louisiana on Thursday, seeking her release. The child was put on a plane to Honduras the next morning before the court opened. They didn't even give him a chance. Hours after the deportation, U.S. District Judge Terry A. Doughty, a Trump appointee, issued an order expressing his concern that the girl had been deported against her father's wishes, while stressing it is illegal and unconstitutional to deport U.S. citizens. Now, I want to give you some additional context here. This judge, Terry Doughty, as the article stated, is a Trump appointee. This is a very, very conservative judge. But as a result of this particular case, with a 2-year-old being deported without a hearing, Guess what this judge did? He now set a hearing for May to determine whether or not the Trump administration just deported a 2-year-old U.S. citizen without due process. And he explicitly said that that is his strong suspicion. So when you have a rogue Trump-appointed judge saying this is too far even for me, this is too illegal and unconstitutional even for me, that's when you know this administration has lost the plot. And again, we're talking about a 2-year-old child who happens to be a U.S. citizen. And it wasn't just the child that was deported, it was also the child's mother, as well as her 11-year-old sister. Not a citizen, but was deported. Basically a dreamer, didn't get due process, neither did the mother seemingly. And the child's father only had the chance to talk to her for about a minute before ICE ended the call and snatched the phone away from her. In other words, this all happened so fast that the father had zero chance to actually intervene to stop his 2-year-old child from being deported to a foreign country. This is insane. Now, we don't have much details about the specifics, whether or not the parents were together or split up or who had custody, but the mother, whose child is a U.S. citizen, was clearly doing everything that she was supposed to do in order to stay in the country. She was undergoing immigration proceedings and whatnot. So the fact that she was a priority to be deported and wasn't allowed to even talk to her lawyers speaks to the depravity of this administration. And we don't know if the mother had a criminal record. Details are still sparse at the time that I record this video, but let's assume that she did for a minute. What's the excuse for the 11-year-old daughter who's a dreamer? Did she have a criminal record? Why did she have to be deported? As for the 4-year-old with stage 4 cancer, also deported with their mother, let's assume the worst about their mother as well. Let's assume that that person's mother was a hardened criminal with a long, long rap sheet. Is it worthwhile to maybe consider for a minute making an exception since her child literally has stage 4 cancer? Can we maybe think perhaps this isn't the priority at this moment in time since they're seeing a U.S. doctor for their stage 4 cancer? I mean, is there not an expectation to at least let them get their medicine before you ship them off to a foreign country? Can they not do that? I mean, it's not just the illegality here that's the problem. It's the inconceivable cruelty. And as I read this article multiple times in preparation for this show, each time I read it, I grew more and more just perplexed by the fact that this isn't like from fiction. This is happening right now in the United States. And as you're going to see, Trump's administration is defending it. The lack of regard for the health of a child, by the way, a 4-year-old who's a U.S. citizen with cancer, is mind-numbing to me. But again, I'm not surprised. And I'm sure that they're going to find new ways to be cruel to children as well as time goes on because they're innovative in their cruelty. They think of new ways to torture people that none of us could even conceive of. So the question that's been at the back of our minds, though, with regard to whether or not this administration is going to deny due process to U.S. citizens, since that's what's happening to non-citizens, has now been answered, by the way. The answer is, unsurprisingly, yes, they do it to U.S. citizens, and they wouldn't just deny due process to U.S. citizens. They deny due process to U.S. citizens and make no exceptions for them, even if they are children literally stricken with cancer. It is the worst of the worst of the worst case scenarios, and they're not even bothering to lie about it. They're just defending it. For example, here's what Marco Rubio and Tom Homan said when they were asked about the deportations of literal children.
On the headline, that's a misleading headline. Okay, 3 U.S. citizens, ages 4, 7, and 2, were not deported. Their mothers, who are legally in this country, were deported. The children went with their mothers. If those children are U.S. citizens, they can come back into the United States if there's their father or someone here who wants to assume them. But ultimately, who was deported was their mothers who were here illegally. The children just went with their mothers. But it wasn't like, you guys make it sound like ICE agents kicked down the door and grabbed the 2-year-old and threw him on an airplane. That's misleading. Yeah. That's just not true.
No U.S. citizen child was deported. Deported means you got to be deported by the immigration judge. We don't deport U.S. citizens.
The mother was deported along with the children.
The children aren't deported. The mother chose to take the children with her.
So you don't think there should be compassionate consideration for a 4-year-old child undergoing treatment for cancer?
I didn't say that. I said
that was the question.
ICE officers do have discretion.
Yeah.
ICE officers do have discretion. I'm not familiar with the specific case. I don't know what facts surround this case. I've just made aware of this when you mentioned this morning. I was not aware of that case.
These people are genuinely evil. So by their twisted logic, they didn't technically deport U.S. citizens since they're children of mothers who were deported that chose to take them with them when they were deported. Except what happens when you deport a mother with U.S. children? Answer that question. You effectively deport the child too, which is why the right often complained about so-called anchor babies, because they knew that you couldn't really deport a mother without deporting her child too. And if the child was born on U.S. soil, that child is a U.S. citizen who you cannot deport. Therefore, through the citizenship of the child, usually you don't really want to go for mothers with U.S. children, since that's kind of gray territory. It's a little bit tricky if we're just trying to talk about this in legal terms and not speak of the morality altogether. But now their official stance is actually fuck those kids and fuck their mothers too. Fuck them even if they have cancer. And to make matters worse, the lack of due process in these cases ensured that literal U.S. citizens who were children were deported. Didn't even give them a chance to make their cases. And again, both of the women, they weren't allowed to contact their attorneys, and only one of them got to talk to the father for a minute until ICE snatched the phone away. So the fathers, the grandparents, they didn't have the chance to request custody for the U.S. citizen children before they were deported. They didn't get to petition the court to hear them out. It just, none of it. I'm so blown away by this. They didn't give the mother who they deported the chance to at least temporarily stay in the country while her 4-year-old underwent cancer treatment. There wasn't a process even in that instance. But Tom Homan, he played dumb, and he said that he wasn't aware of that particular case because ICE agents, they have discretion, so they're doing things that he's not aware of. But I'm glad that he brought that up, because that's a major problem. If these ICE agents, who are basically the modern day equivalent to the Gestapo, have so much discretion to handle these cases as they see fit, and they're unlawfully detaining U.S. citizens and Canadian citizens and kidnapping students and throwing them in unmarked vehicles and breaking windows of cars and entering homes without warrants and not letting immigrants talk to attorneys, maybe they shouldn't have this much discretion. Maybe all of this power is corrupting them. Maybe these people are morally defective and they are evil, and they shouldn't be in control of people's lives. They know that ICE is abusing power, though. They're not actually dumb, and that's the point. They are deliberately cultivating a culture of fear, and they want agents to be as cruel as possible as a deterrent to other future immigrants. And I say this because a couple of weeks ago, there was a video of an ICE agent breaking a car window to abduct an immigrant, and it went viral. And ICE put out a response to the video after it went viral and basically said, the ICE agent didn't use excessive force. He basically handled that situation appropriately. And CNN is going to break it down with some additional facts here.
But they did issue a statement, and they said that the actions of the officers in that video that you just watched were, quote, deemed appropriate by the officers on the scene, going on to say that those officers are trained, quote, to use the minimum amount of force necessary to resolve a situation. They also provide a little more background as to the man that they took into custody, Juan Francisco Menendez. He's 29 years old, and they say in the statement, quote, is an illegally present Guatemalan alien who was detained by ICE Boston in New Bedford, Massachusetts, April 14th, going on to say that during the course of the arrest, he refused to comply with officers' instructions and resisted apprehension. Now, his wife talks about this a little bit, and their attorney elaborated to say that when they were pulled over, they did call the attorney. The attorney had recommended to them that they give her business card to the officers and told them to remain silent. But as you can see, it escalated there with them smashing the window. Now, the attorney also says, and his wife says, that he has no criminal record, that while he did cross into the U.S. legally, they were trying to adjust his status, and he appears to qualify for a form of asylum. So that was underway when, of course, this happened and he was detained. Now, I will also note that the Department of Homeland Security often defers to Immigration and Customs Enforcement on how they decide to proceed with any type of encounter and their discretion. We saw this earlier in the year with some of the memos that they put out, particularly when doing enforcement, for example, near churches or schools, essentially putting the onus on the officers to decide whether something is appropriate or not. I will also note that not long ago, we were similarly covering the story of a Salvadoran woman who was in the vehicle with her daughter in Maryland, and her window was also shattered, and she was taken into custody. We've continued to report on what exactly it is that they have held her for, but certainly this is something that we have seen over time now.
And now it's only a matter of time until they smash the windows of your home if they suspect that you're harboring an undocumented immigrant. This harkens back to a time in human history that we said we'd never repeat, but here we are in America in 2025 doing the same thing we said we would never let happen again. And to be clear, the cruelty is the point. They've decided that immigrants aren't human, therefore it's okay to treat them like animals. And in case you're wondering whether or not MAGA thinks that this administration has taken things too far, the people who voted for Trump in particular think maybe I didn't sign up for all of this, the answer is no. And I say this because Vinny Oshaa of the far-right PBD Podcast was on Piers Morgan defending the deportation of a 2-year-old.
That 2-year-old was here with an illegal alien mother. And if the mother gets deported, Piers, the kids go with the mother. So stop that rhetoric.
She is a 2-year-old being treated for cancer.
Excuse me.
And if you look at the comment sections under articles about this, for example, the New York Post, they were downright giddy about these deportations. Here's some examples. Great job, ICE. Keep up the great work. Tom Homan is the border czar, and boy, is he doing a great job cleaning up the Democrat mess. Democrats obviously want kids to be separated from their parents. That's Obama thinking. Keep up the great work, Tom. It's appreciated, sir. The best team is this one. Noam is also working to keep America safe. Children don't have agency unless they live in California and want to transition. Okay? The left is so desperate and just keeps lying and gaslighting, and we just keep laughing. We got it from here. I couldn't care less one way or the other as long as they're deported. I came here to say the same thing. First, children born to illegals in the U.S. are not legal citizens. Send them all home. That's the response to a story about a U.S. citizen who's 4 years old with cancer getting deported. And look, this is not the first time that MAGA has celebrated deportations. There was a TikTok video of a young man crying about his mom getting deported that was shared on Twitter. It went viral, and MAGA was laughing hysterically in the comments, saying, "This is awesome. This is what I voted for. Thumbs up." Mark Cuban also asked Trump supporters after the election if they'd support the deportation of, for example, a grandmother who's been here for decades with grandchildren and children in the country, and they overwhelmingly said, yes, send her to whatever country she came from. This is a modern-day Nazi movement who thinks that this should be a country exclusively for white people. They're barely hiding the fact that they want a white ethno-state anymore. I mean, listen to White House Press Secretary laugh in response to blatant racism from a right-wing influencer named Aaron Wexler. You're not going to see her on video, but you have Sean Spicer and the White House Press Secretary laughing in response to just straight-up racism.
And I can attest to the deportations in Florida. My Uber drivers finally speak English again, so thank you for that.
Disgusting, but that's who these people are. Now ask yourself, with all of these deportations, have things gotten better in America generally speaking? I mean, we all know that they've gotten worse. Obviously, it's a rhetorical question, but specifically, they voted for Donald Trump. So, I mean, has he delivered? Has the cost of living gone down? Are you making more money right now? Were you able to buy a home or a car? Because apparently immigrants were the cause of all of our economic problems. So if we get them out of the country, then everything will be better, right? I mean, one would think that at some point MAGA would have to reckon with the fact that things haven't gotten better as Trump promised, despite the mass deportations that were linked to their economic suffering on the campaign trail. But I mean, the reason why there's no self-reflection in part is because they're too stupid to be introspective, and also because a large number of Trump supporters, they weren't just duped into voting against their own self-interest. Many were, sure, but a lot of them willingly voted against their own self-interest. They voted for Donald Trump despite knowing he would give tax cuts to the rich and deregulate, which would fuck them over, but they still voted for him anyway because they knew even though things would get worse for them, things would get much, much worse for immigrants, and that hate fuels them. Why do you need to eat food when the only nourishment that you need is that hatred for your cold, dead heart? Like, they would happily cut off their noses to spite their face. That's what a lot of them voted for. So these deportations are only going to continue to get worse and more cruel over time, and the modern-day Nazi movement, aka MAGA, is never going to bat an eye. They're not going to abandon him. It doesn't matter how many lines he crosses. There's no bottom to this disgusting death cult. So if you were thinking that they'd somehow turn on this administration if he crossed the line or just went too far, I'm here to tell you that that is never going to happen. There is no line. If they're celebrating the deportation of U.S. children, one of which has stage 4 cancer, there is literally nothing that these people won't celebrate.